Okay, so we're diving into Terrible Humans.
Yeah.
This book by Patrick Alley.
Yeah.
It's really a deep dive into Global Witness, his NGO, and their investigations into, well, how corruption fuels conflict, puts people at risk.
Right.
And also, like, the incredible people fighting back against it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, actually. Alley dedicates the book to those confronting these, as he calls them, these terrible humans, the people who are actually profiting from this conflict, from the exploitation.
Yeah.
And, he's been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
He saw, like, the hope after the Cold War, but also the rise of these new threats.
Yeah.
Like climate inaction, you've got inequality, and now, of course, Putin's war on Ukraine.
Yeah, speaking of Ukraine, Alley really doesn't hold back on, like, showing how corruption is just fueling that conflict.
Yeah.
He talks about how Global Witness really meticulously tracked jet fuel.
Wow.
Like, traced it from Russian oil fields all the way to the military bases that are, launching these attacks on Ukraine.
That's incredible.
And it's wild. Their investigation actually uncovers the involvement of Western companies.
Really?
Specifically, Total Energies. They were still supplying jet fuel, essentially like fueling this conflict, even after sanctions were imposed.
I mean, that's pretty shocking.
It is shocking, and he even describes this, like, really tense encounter between a young Global Witness campaigner and Total Energies CEO.
At like an industry event or something?
Yeah, like an industry event, and they're like calling them out publicly.
Wow.
Like, sparks this whole media frenzy,
Yeah.
And it makes you think, like, what power do we have as consumers, right, to influence these huge corporations
Yeah.
and their actions, especially these conflict zones?
Absolutely. And I think that's really at the heart of what Alley's exploring, right?
Yeah.
It's holding power accountable, whether it's these huge corporations or even just individuals who are,
Right.
And speaking of accountability, he dives into this. It's really a chilling story, the murder of Jan Kuciak, the Slovak journalist who was investigating corruption.
I remember that. It was, that story sent chills down my spine, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Kuciak and his fiancée were murdered.
Yeah.
And it was through, like, surveillance footage, burner phones. They really had to, like,
oh, wow.
dig into this, and this massive data leak called Kuchner's Library.
What? Yeah, I couldn't have heard of that.
Oh, it's wild.
Okay.
Investigators kind of untangled this web of corruption that went all the way to, like, the highest levels of government.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
It makes you realize, like, how important press freedom is and those whistleblower protections. They're so crucial.
Yeah, and Kuchner's Library, it really showed how deeply individuals like this guy, Marian Kushner,
Okay.
who was a businessman with alleged mafia ties,
Oh, wow.
could just manipulate the system,
Wow.
like controlling politicians, police, even judges.
It's terrifying how easily these powerful figures can manipulate, like, silence opposition.
Oh, yeah.
And journalists, unfortunately, often become targets just for doing their job, uncovering the truth.
Absolutely.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right?
Right.
Alley also talks about this incredible, like, almost unbelievable chase across the Southern Ocean.
Really?
The decade-long pursuit of the Thunder.
What is that?
It was an illegal fishing vessel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So this was like a pirate fishing vessel.
Essentially, they were plundering the Southern Ocean, and Alley makes it clear it's not just about fish, This is organized environmental crime.
Wow.
And it hidden in plain sight. He highlights the work of Sea Shepherd, you know them, right?
Yeah.
The conservation group, known for, their direct action tactics.
Yeah.
Well, they played a key role in tracking this thunder.
I mean, that's got to be dangerous work.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're putting themselves at risk to protect our oceans.
Yeah.
Imagine, like, the ice grinding against the ship, these towering waves crashing over the deck. It was this constant battle against the elements, but also this relentless pursuit of justice.
It's like something out of a movie or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But capturing the thunder was just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly, because it revealed these vast networks involved.
Wow.
From corrupt officials to these kingpins who were profiting from it.
It's crazy how these networks operate.
It really is. And what struck me is how we need this, like, global cooperation to really tackle these issues. It can't be done alone.
That's true. Speaking of global networks, Alley's investigation into the Central African Republic, equally gripping, right?
Oh, yeah.
Reveals a different kind of, well, terrible human.
Oh, yeah, the Central African Republic, I mean, that's a whole other level.
It is.
Ali really dives into the work of Nathalia Ducan,
Right.
a global witness investigator who spent years there uncovering, like, the brutal reality of the Wagner Group's presence.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. The Wagner Group, those Russian mercenaries, they've essentially, like, seized control, right?
Yeah.
Of the car's resources, gold, diamonds.
Everything.
And their methods are, I mean, they're horrifying. Massacres, torture, rape, all to silence any opposition. Like, it's like something out of a nightmare.
It is, and Nathalia's work, like collecting these testimonies from survivors, it's so important.
Oh, absolutely.
She paints this picture of the violence in places like Bambari, where Wagner, along with government forces, actually attacked civilians, leaving just this trail of brutality.
It's hard to even comprehend the level of violence. Ali describes, families forced to witness executions, widespread sexual violence, entire communities just terrorized into silence. It makes you realize the human cost of corruption, right? It's immense.
It is.
And it just paves the way for even more horrific human rights abuses.
Yeah, and I think that's a key takeaway for me from this book is how corruption just creates this breeding ground for impunity.
Right.
Those in power, whether they're corrupt officials or groups like Wagner, they know they can act without facing any consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just the victims who are at risk, right? Nathalia herself, she faced constant danger, always having to have these escape routes planned out, relying on trusted contacts for safety.
Wow.
I mean, it takes incredible courage to do that kind of work,
Yeah,
Shining a light on these really dark corners of the world.
for sure.
And then Ali, he takes us from the jungles of the Kawar to the shadowy world of wildlife trafficking, going undercover with the Wildlife Justice Commission.
Oh, the WJC.
The WJC, yeah.
Yeah,
Their approach is fascinating,
it is.
using these undercover operatives to infiltrate these criminal networks, building cases for law enforcement.
Right, but they're not just trying to disrupt individual shipments, right? They're aiming to dismantle these entire networks from the bottom to the top.
It's like something you'd see in a spy thriller.
I know.
One case that really stood out was their investigation of Nam, this Vietnamese trafficker.
Okay.
And what's interesting is, despite his position, right, in this network, Ali describes him as incredibly careless, almost amateurish.
Wow.
Like, he used the same phones, bank accounts, even meeting spots. It's like he was practically begging to get caught.
That's wild. Yeah, it just goes to show that even in these complex criminal operations, human error, ego, it can be their downfall.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how meticulous you have to be when you're doing these investigations, the patience required to kind of unravel these webs of corruption.
It's true. And the WJC's work, I think it sheds light on the bigger picture of the illegal wildlife trade, too.
Yeah.
Even with successful busts, arrests that demand for these products, it's still there. It's fueling the cycle.
Yeah, for sure. It raises the question of what responsibility do we have as consumers?
Yeah.
To really understand where the products that we're buying are coming from.
That's such a good question. And Ali, he doesn't shy away from the tough questions. He talks about how we need solutions that go beyond just targeting these networks.
Right.
We need to address the root causes of this demand, right?
Yeah.
Like poverty, lack of opportunity, if we really want to make a difference.
Absolutely. He also kind of delves into the ethical complexities of the WJC's methods, too. Like, imagine having to build relationships with criminals, right?
Right.
You're engaging in these illegal activities, and it's all in the name of justice, but still...
It's a morally ambiguous world.
Very much so.
Yeah, and the stakes are incredibly high, not just for the operatives who are, risking their lives, but for the species
Right.
that they're trying to protect.
Absolutely.
From the car to Vietnam, it's clear that corruption is a global problem.
It is.
And then Ali takes us deep into the heart of Africa to the Democratic Republic of Congo to unravel this scandal involving Dan Gertler,
Oh, yeah,
who
Gertler.
became the gatekeeper to the DRC's vast mineral wealth.
Gertler's story is it's a classic case of how corruption can just bleed a nation dry.
It really is.
He used his close ties with former President Joseph Kabila to acquire all these mining assets at just ridiculously low prices, costing the DRC billions in lost revenue.
I mean, it's mind-boggling how much wealth was just siphoned away. Ali lays out how Global Witness, they meticulously untangled Gertler's web of shell companies.
Right.
Tracing the money as it flowed offshore.
Wow.
And, they relied on these brave whistleblowers.
Yeah.
Like Navy and Grady,
Right.
who risked everything to expose the truth.
And those whistleblowers are so critical in these investigations. Think about it. They're the ones on the inside.
Right, they see it firsthand.
Exactly. But speaking out against these powerful figures like Gertler, that comes at a huge personal cost.
Oh, absolutely.
Threats, intimidation,
Yeah.
you name it, they face it.
It takes guts to stand up like that.
It does.
And Gertler, he didn't just benefit.
Yes.
Right? He actively tried to silence anyone who challenged him. Like Allie talks about these aggressive legal attacks.
Oh, yeah.
The smear campaigns. It shows how far these terrible humans will go to protect what they have.
It's a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play and, the dangers faced by those who dare to expose the truth. But there is a sense of hope in this story because Global Witness's investigation,
Yeah.
along with pressure from other NGOs and journalists, it led to sanctions against Gertler.
Wow.
It proves that even the most powerful figures can be held accountable.
It shows these investigations matter.
I do.
They have real-world impact.
Yeah,
But, as we've seen throughout the book, corruption, it takes many forms. Right?
it does.
Allie dives into the world of spyware abuse,
Oh, wow.
highlighting the work of Citizen Lab,
Okay.
a group that investigates the misuse of surveillance technology.
Right. I've heard of them.
They've been, instrumental in exposing the use of Pegasus.
Yeah, Pegasus. That's that spyware that can, turn your phone into a listening device, right?
Yeah.
That's scary stuff.
It is scary stuff.
Imagine, your phone, something you use every day,
Right.
suddenly becomes this tool for spying. It's like Citizen Lab has really been on the front lines exposing how governments
Yeah, other powerful actors.
use this to target activists, journalists, even political opponents.
It's like something out of a dystopian novel.
I know.
Allie talks about Omar Abdulaziz, a Saudi activist living in Canada.
Right.
His phone was hacked with Pegasus, but the information they got wasn't just used against him.
Oh, no.
They used it to target his friends and family back in Saudi Arabia.
No.
Led to their arrest, their torture.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. It just highlights how global the reach of this technology is and, the fact that repression can be transnational now.
Exactly. And what's really concerning is that these companies, like NSO Group, the ones who make Pegasus,
Yeah, what about them?
they operate with so little transparency,
That's a problem.
accountability. It's really frightening.
Yeah.
But Allie doesn't let them off the hook. He really raises these important questions about, their ethical responsibility
Of course.
and the urgent need for stricter regulations around, the sale and use of this spyware.
Absolutely. It's a tough issue, right? Because
Yeah.
you've got to balance national security with the right to privacy.
Right, exactly.
But with more and more of these spyware abuses coming to light, it's clear we need greater oversight to make sure that these technologies aren't being used to silence people.
Exactly, just for their work, their beliefs. After finishing this book, it's clear there's no easy answers here.
No.
But Allie leaves us with a powerful message, right?
Yeah,
We all have a role to play in confronting corruption.
I agree.
It starts with awareness, right?
Yeah.
Understanding the systems and the tactics used by those who benefit from them.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just awareness. We need to demand transparency.
Yes. Yeah.
From our leaders, we need to support investigative journalism
It's so important.
and hold these corporations accountable.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that even small actions, being informed consumers, supporting those organizations on the ground, doing the work,
Right.
these all contribute to a much larger movement for change.
They do.
So after this deep dive, right, into terrible humans, I'm left with this question. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you let it spark you into action? Because in a world rife with corruption, silence only empowers those operating in the shadows.